And we are live.
Greetings, I'm Dr. Al Freeman, Director of LCMS School Ministry, and welcome to ToolKit Thursday, where today Esther and Michaela will talk about parent-teacher conferences and how timely, also report cards too, I should remember that as well. Very timely because Esther is in the midst of parent-teacher conferences today. So I think she just finished one, she's getting ready for another one and sandwiched this right in between. So this is in action today. With all of that, a couple of things. You do have a link in the chat to a Google Drive with some resources in there, documents for today, and also documents of days gone by. This folder also contains some documents in here from last year when Michaela and Esther were doing these episodes as well. And we'll continue to put more items in here also. With that, welcome everyone, and we'll open in prayer, and then I get to turn it over to Esther and Michaela, who will have some great teacher toolkit items for you on this Thursday. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for being here and serving you in so many different locations and school ministries throughout the country. We ask that you continue to be with those who are struggling, especially from natural disasters and weather events. Be with those who are in Florida and the Carolinas and all up and down the southeastern seaboard as they experience floods and the windstorms and tornadoes, and especially the double hurricanes that have hit Florida in so many ways and displaced some of our church workers as well as other individuals and damaged churches. And we especially bring to you Grace in St. Petersburg that's suffered damage and is trying to get their students back into classrooms so that they can be cared for and have a little return to normalcy and see one another and experience that fellowship and being together. We ask you to be with all of our alert teams, our early response teams, disaster relief teams, and all those who are helping in so many different ways through donations and actively working and doing so many things. Be with all those families impacted, and especially the children who are thrown in so many different directions at this time and maybe struggling with just the everyday needs and trying to figure out what is going on. We ask that you be with us today. Make this be a session where we learn and grow and serve our parents, our families, the students in our communities in all that we do. Continue to bless Michaela and Esther as they bring the Teacher ToolKit Thursdays to everyone and give some tips and have a great discussion. All this we pray in your son's name. Amen. We'll see if Esther is up and running now on the audio as well. She was struggling there a little bit, I saw.
That is all right. We will get started while she gets it figured out.
There we go.
So, like Al said, today we're going to talk about report cards and parent-teacher conferences because that's kind of where everybody's headed or already in the middle of with this part of the school year. So we'll start with report cards because you should probably have those ready for your conferences. So the first thing that we wanted to mention with our report cards is just be aware of when grades are due. I know for me, it's always the Friday after the quarter ends. So we have one kind of catch-up week. And then that next Friday is when they get printed. So just making sure you know when is that print date so your stuff can be done and you're not kind of the teacher holding up everything or needing printed at a different time. If you are doing anything different besides just putting in grades for, math or reading or English, maybe you do like an attribute grading, or you somehow have a school way of grading behavior, or you add in church attendance, or you want to put notes in there, don't forget about doing those. Those can be kind of timely. So if you're not setting some time aside for that, make sure that you kind of put that into your plans or somewhere maybe in that week of buffer time so that you're able to get all of those notes and everything else added in as well. I know that for us, we have to have the church attendance in there. I always try to put out of how many weeks they could have attended church, just because just putting a number on there is hard for parents to remember. Okay, well, you say I went to church, 4 times. Is that 4 times out of 5 weeks? Is that 4 times out of 8, 11, especially with the quarters kind of varying? So giving them kind of just an insight if they're using that as a way to gauge their own spiritual growth, giving them that background knowledge of how many there were, because I know as a parent, I would never know. I only know because I can count on my paper of how many times they wrote yes or no. Also making sure that you're entering your grades before you're doing the comments so that once you have those all in, you're able to look at those grades and then kind of write a comment if necessary. If you have a D or an F on a report card, you definitely want to make sure you're leaving a comment for the parents, kind of giving them a reason that's why their child's at that grade and also a solution. It also will give you something to talk about at your parent-teacher conferences when you give them their report card, because you already kind of had a thought that you already took the time to write and for you to go off of instead of trying to think in the moment, which can sometimes be hard, especially if you have conference after conference after conference and you're not really getting a break in between. It's nice to have something to reference. Going into those parent-teacher conferences, it is important to know that you might be nervous, but the parents might be nervous as well. There can be a lot of emotions that are going into a parent-teacher conference. They're worried about how their kid's doing. Their kid is with you most of the day during the school year, so they're really not sure. They're not seeing what they're doing at school. Well, you might be communicating those things. Parents will still get a little nervous about what's going to be said about their kid. It's like a reflection of them. So just making sure that you are planned and you're prepared. So when that parent comes in, you can help kind of set an ease and calmness to the situation. There are times that a parent might request a conference outside of your scheduled parent-teacher conferences. Esther's and my suggestion for that would be to not schedule that for the same day. If you get an email in the morning about a parent wanting to set up a conference with you, try to put it out 24 hours. You might want to ask them some follow-up questions. Is this a concern you have about academics? Is this a concern you have about a social situation? Just trying to figure out maybe more what the parent wants to talk about. And then it gives you those 24 hours to kind of come up with a plan instead of walking into a meeting blind where a parent's trying to get information from you, but you didn't have time to prepare for it. Which is the nice part of parent-teacher conferences is that you can be prepared because you know when they are going to happen. Some schools do different ways of getting parent-teacher conference signups out to the parents. Some schools, you might be in charge of getting that list out on your own. At other schools, maybe you're sending your link to the office and the office will send that out to you as well. So parents are only getting one email if they have multiple kids in multiple grades, makes their email a little bit less full and a little easier for a parent to find that right link. So just checking with maybe a teacher who's worked there before to kind of see how your school does that piece. And then it's also really nice if you're able to choose a website, if this part is up to you, that will have your parents sign up and then you can choose for it to automatically send a reminder to that parent. So you don't have to create messages that are going to go out the day before or the morning before saying, hey, don't forget to come in for your conference. You can send out that sign up, the parent can sign up, and then that website will take care of the reminder for you. And it's just one less thing that you're trying to do while you're also trying to prepare for all of those conferences coming up. I know that it's an option on Sign Up Genius. It's an oldie but a goodie. That's what I've used and it works really nicely.
And my audio works now, so I can chime in. My school uses PTC Fast, which also works very smoothly. I really appreciate that my school uses that because parents can't tell if you requested a break just to give yourself a break, or if you requested, or if somebody else has filled that spot. That helps people stay on schedule if they think somebody else is right after them. And so
Yes.
sometimes post the families in order, but sometimes I'll leave out the times so that I know when my breaks are, but parents don't take advantage of that.
And I think it's important when you are creating your list, thinking about what is a reasonable amount of time it should take me to get through the average student. I know for us, we set it at 20 minutes for our first graders, mostly because we have to do 30 plus parent teacher conferences since we have a bigger class, and doing more time than that is way too many nights at school past what we should be doing. But then also knowing that we might get into a conversation with a parent where we have to cut that off and say, you know, I'm really glad about the conversation we're having right now, but I have more kids coming in, or, you know, you're my last one for the night, maybe you can finish it. But if you have another parent coming in, just saying, you know, let's schedule another time. Send me an email with some times that we can finish this conversation. I want to, but I have to respect the time of people coming in after you. And knowing that that's an option as well, if you do go with maybe a shorter time, what a parent might need.
Yeah. It's also important to communicate the times of your conferences, of specific ones, if you want to include other people, or if you want to make admin aware of the conference that's happening because you know that it might get, maybe you're worried about it for some reason. Maybe they can be in the hallway for support, or maybe they can join you as well. You can also include people who work with your student as well. So I have somebody who works individually with one of my students and in a small group with them, and they create their own progress report for him. So I've invited her to his conference as well. You don't have to include others, but sometimes it's easier to meet all together at the same time. You're saving the parents' time from setting up individual conferences, and it shows the united front that you're all here to support that child.
And I would say if that person isn't available to come in, or maybe they're still going to host their own conference, still touch base with them. So you kind of know what they're going to say, they know what you're going to say, so that they're at least getting a united message from both of you. Not here I am as the teacher saying one thing and here's the specialist saying another. So just taking the time to catch them in the hallway when they're dropping them back off, or sending them an email and just doing a quick check-in. Hey, we've got conferences coming up. I know you won't be there. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Can be an easy way to just, you know, keep that united front, even if you're not all there.
Yes. And if you're
Oscar.
planning what to say, then make a plan for yourself. So at my school, we touch on grades. We give them their first quarter report card when they get to the parent-teacher conference. And we also show them their MAPS scores. And then I talk about any behaviors or anything that I really want to address with the parents. And I leave room for questions as well, because I want to address any concerns the parents might have.
We give the report card at that parent teacher conference since it's at the end of the first quarter. And then we typically will have a little write-up about reading, any of the other testing that we've done, like we'll do the STAR test and show that to parents. And then I normally have a math paper also to at least hit those two core subjects and making sure the parents understand where their kids are at. We also take the time to kind of give a heads up to parents about like, hey, we're going to start having more math homework now, because first quarter was all at school. Second quarter, it's going to start picking up, so that they're aware, like, hey, there's going to be a change in their homework coming home. And you as a parent, I need support for that as well. So making sure they're aware of any upcoming changes or anything like that. If you know you have a trip or a large school event coming up, having a paper or even just a little checklist you can go down, making sure, oh, yep, I should tell them about this also, can be helpful just to keep you on track. It can be hard sometimes when you're doing the same thing kind of over and over to be like, oh, I did that last time, but did I say this to this family or not? But if you kind of create a list that you're checking off as you go, it's easy to make sure you hit each thing with each family and nothing's forgotten.
I noticed in the chat a question about setting the conference time up. At my school, the school automatically set conferences for 15 minutes without a break between, so that you're just going like to the next conference. But teachers are welcome to add in as many breaks as they want before it gets sent out to families. So I don't mind meeting with people back to back, but I'll give myself a break every hour or hour and a half just to make up for lost time, or more likely use the bathroom or get a drink, eat a snack. If I know that a conference, or if I anticipate it going long, sometimes I'll request the family to book 2 slots so that we have 30 minutes to talk, and they'll just be back-to-back slots. But most of the parents just do one. And honestly, if you need 30 minutes, it's okay to just schedule that. Even if you count it as a break on your end, so nobody else sees that they get double, you can do that and just know for yourself that you're going to meet with them for longer.
And same with us. We, as teachers, all choose different times. We picked 20 because we feel like it's enough time for us to get through everything we need to, with probably giving us about a 5-ish minute buffer. So it's really about a 15-minute average conference, giving us a 5-minute buffer in case they go a little bit longer, or, you know, we need to run to the bathroom or something before the next family comes in. But
That
it's
makes sense.
kind of teacher preference, how long you think you need to get through comments you want to make.
Yeah. I have parents help me stay on schedule because I have a sign on the door. If I have a lot of conferences, I'll put a sign on the door that says, please knock at your scheduled time. And that'll be an auditory reminder to finish the conference and to go on to the next one. And it really does help wrap things up. Because usually I've already wrapped it up by then. And sometimes parents are just telling me a story or adding on to something that we've already said. And then they're like, oh, somebody's waiting, and thanks for your time. Goodbye. So it helps. If you can just put a sign that says that, please knock when you're at your scheduled conference time. It makes it pretty easy.
Definitely. And if this is your first time doing conferences and you're a little bit nervous, I know my first year, I talked to my co-teacher and I was just like, hey, can we do 2 mock conferences? One where she was the teacher and I pretended to be a parent, so I could kind of see how she did her side of things. And then we reversed it, where I had a chance to be a teacher and she was a mock parent for me. And then I was able to at least get through one that had, you know, no pressure of an actual parent asking me questions about a student in my class, and just kind of get into a drive of, oh, okay, I do know what I'm going to say. I have this kind of down, instead of trying to do it the first time. I know that was something for me that was super helpful my first year teaching, and it doesn't take long to do it. I mean, you don't have to do a whole 15-minute spiel when you're just practicing quickly, but just doing a quick, like, okay, can I just practice going through this report card once, and pick kind of maybe a more difficult student, a student that maybe you're a little more nervous about the conversation with the parent, maybe because of academics or behaviors. And then that will kind of ease your nerves going into that, so you can have that calm presence for the parents when they're coming in.
And if by chance you're watching this and you haven't started teaching yet, but you're doing student teaching, make sure to ask your cooperating teacher if you can join in on conferences to give yourself an idea of the flow and what to talk about, how to phrase things. I know that really helped me watching my teacher do that. When you're doing conferences, it's also important to set the scene. So have students clean their desks and the room before conferences, put student work up in the hallway if you can. And if you don't have time to put a project up in the hallway, have them do a coloring sheet and put it up so it's not bare. There was one time I did leave the hallway bare. I had just sent home a project from the hallway, and I noticed my students' parents, as they were waiting for conferences to start, had to look at other classes' work, and I was embarrassed. So don't make my mistake. Don't do my mistake again. Just leave work up there, whatever it is. And if you already have work up the week before, just leave it up. You don't need to send it home that week. Just leave it up for conferences. I also like to put chairs outside. I like having adult-sized or, bigger student-sized chairs out there. My fourth grade chairs work fine for families, but when I taught preschool, those preschool chairs were very, very small and very low to the ground, so we needed to use larger chairs. So put chairs outside of your classroom, and then also have chairs inside your classroom that adults can sit on too. Normally I have stools and more fun chairs at my back table where I meet with the families, but I stack those and put them to the side and put normal student chairs at the back table because they're more comfortable for parents. You don't need them distracted during the conference.
Esther, you just mentioned that you do them at your back table, and I don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
to forget this. I'm gonna jump in. It's better if you have a table to be able to do your conferences at, to set up meeting with the parents there, than trying to do it at your desk. Your desk puts you into a position of power and puts you just naturally seemingly above the parent. And in these situations, you definitely want to be able to make the parent feel like that they're not maybe completely equal, but that you are wanting to work with them. And this is something that the two of you are sitting down to talk about because you both care about the same person, their kid. So if you have another space besides your desk, I would really encourage you to use that space and bring some extra chairs over to that than having your parents pull up extra chairs to your desk.
Yes. And if you don't have an extra table, and you can put student desks together and just meet at student desks too. It doesn't have to be their student. It can be a very clean set of students and just push them together and make it your own table if worse comes to worse. I also like to have pens on the table and sticky notes so that if either of us have something that we want to jot on, we can. And I've had a lot of conferences already, and we've used the sticky notes and pens at most of them. So it's just handy for parents to use or for you to use. I do like having something to take notes on, whether it's a Post-it note or a piece of paper. So when parents suggest something or I think of something that I can be doing differently and I tell parents that I'm going to be doing it, I want to be able to write it down so that I don't forget, because I might forget, especially after meeting with 24 families, if I don't write it down. So writing it down really helps me.
Definitely. And then one last part about setting the scene is you're going to want to make sure that if you're doing just parents and teachers at the conference and they're leaving their student somewhere else at home, make sure that you give the parents directions how to get to your classroom, because they don't have their child there to show them. So they maybe came in during the summer, but chances are they probably don't still remember where your classroom exactly is unless they've been doing things in your room with you throughout the first quarter. So just giving a quick direction of, hey, this is where my classroom is, and then also checking with whoever's in charge of your doors to your actual school building, making sure that the ones that need to be unlocked are unlocked so they can actually get inside the school. And then in our case, we would need another door unlocked, a fire door, for them to get into the school side of the building. So making sure whoever that person is in charge of setting those key schedules is allowing those doors to remain open up until your last conference each of your days.
Mm-hmm. It's also important to tell your custodians when your conferences are. Our conferences run into the evenings to allow for parents to not have to take off work for them. We also provide them during the day because we take off a day and a half of school for conferences. But like I said, it's easier for a lot of parents to do it at night or in the evening time. So I tell the custodians when I'm going to have conferences so that they don't have to wait around my room wondering when I'm going to be done, and they can come to the room. So it's better to over communicate than under communicate about when they can be in the room.
Mm-hmm. And then I think, Esther, you and I do conferences a little differently. We in first grade do just parents and teachers, but I think last year you mentioned you sometimes or in the past have done student-led ones.
I
So
have in
making
the
sure you've decided which way you're doing that.
Yes, yes. Now I do just parent-teacher conferences because that's what we do school-wide. And in the past, I've done student-led conferences, which we had to plan for. So I worked with the students to create goals, looking at the data from the year, and they created their independent goals and they planned the conference. They wrote their own prayer for the conference and they walked their parents through how they were doing in each subject, how they were doing with their social skills and work habits. And they were taking accountability for it. And I loved how honest the students were about areas of success, but also their areas of needed improvement. And parents really liked how the students stepped up. Some of them were shocked to see their student present a conference and lead a conference. And it really showed that the students are very capable of a lot of things in fourth grade. And yeah, I really enjoyed them. But I also know that some parents would prefer just to have the parent-teacher conversation to talk about things that maybe they don't want their child to know about yet. Sometimes it's helpful to parents to kind of gauge where their student is in comparison to other students their age, or their year in school. And you don't want to do that in front of the student. And then sometimes a parent might tell you about something happening in their family life that they don't want the child to be worried about, but they want to make you aware of. And so that in those instances, it's been really helpful to have just the parents there. So
And I have in the past to try to kind of have a bit of that student-led piece without the child being there. You can even just make a super simple form that's like in the lower grades. I just did one that was like, right now my favorite subject is whatever. My least favorite subject is whatever. Something I'm good at is the kid filled in the blank, and something I could improve on, and the kid could fill in the blank. And then it's really just 4 quick, simple answers that you just need to write a subject down. And then you're able to share that with the parent, and they're able to still kind of see what their child thinks about how the year is going without them needing to be there. And I know parents appreciated that years I've done that.
Yes, they do. They do. And if they can write, that's great. And if you need to do just happy face, medium face, sad face, you can do that. And then when you're all prepped and ready, it's go time. So we like to start our conferences off with prayers. In the chat, Al Freeman posted a link, and in that link, you'll have access to just a sample conference prayer. You can use this, or you can, oh, thank you. Will just posted it again. I appreciate it. You will have access to a conference prayer. You can make it your own. This is just one that I've been using for a long time. And I'll mix it up too, because at this point I pretty much have it memorized. So you can mix it up, make it your own, or just keep it as is. It's nice to have something printed just in case you get nervous, especially your first few years. And it's still going to be heartfelt, and you're still praying with the families, and they really appreciate it. When you start with prayer, you're setting the tone that Christ is at the center, and you're also saying that you guys are on the same page and you're here to help the child.
After you pray, I would always suggest that you start off with something positive about that child, something you enjoy about them. They tell you really funny stories or jokes. You really love how hardworking they are. Some type of a positive comment to start, and then move into the rest of your conference. And then you can kind of wrap it around at the end with that same positive comment or another one, just to start and end on that positive note.
Right. we call this the Oreo cookie strategy, right? Or the sandwich strategy. So always start with and end with something sweet. Sorry about my bell system. During conferences, I also like to use I statements with the families. Like, I've noticed things like that in order to address concerns that I have. We know that it helps with the relationship when you don't just blame the student for everything and talk about how bad they are, but you talk about the behavior that you've seen. It's also important to ask parents what questions or concerns they have and make sure they have time and make sure you have time to address those as well. If you have a concern for the child, come to the conference with an idea of how to solve that problem already. And if you do not or have an idea, or if you've run out of ideas, say what you've done, but then ask the parents if they've noticed that at home and what they've done, because they might have a strategy and you just have to use the same terminology as them for the student to understand what you're trying to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Usually parents will want to help you brainstorm too.
Yeah, and you always want to approach those situations as you're trying to be a team with the parents. It's not the parents and you working against each other, but it's the two of you working together to help that child be successful. So using a lot of we or like team language, and then still ending even those conversations with just that positive piece of, you know, I know he's struggling here or whatever, but it's really nice when you're able to see him do well in this area and kind of bring that back around and knowing that he's capable of doing these things that maybe you're working together to improve. And sometimes those conversations can be hard, but I would encourage you to not like shy away from them. Because the parents can only help if you make them aware. Chances are these kids aren't going home and saying, yeah, mom, I don't pay attention in math class, or math class is really hard for me, or they're not going home and fessing up to it because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't really like coming home and saying, I did really bad at this today. Those kids don't really want to go home and have that negative experience at home either. So just recognizing that, yeah, it can be uncomfortable. Yes, it can be hard, but it's a part of our job in order to work with those parents. So being able to kind of overcome some of that for the betterment of the child.
So to restate that, because I want it to be emphasized really well, if you have a concern about the child, whether it be academic, behavioral, or speech, an OT issue, anything where you might need an interventionist or where you might need documentation, you need to address it with parents during conferences when you are face to face. Address it sooner rather than later. If you get to third or fourth quarter and you address it then and tell them it's been happening all school year and you did meet with them for conferences, it'll seem as if you weren't fully honest with them at the beginning of the year. So be honest. It can be tough because you want to communicate how much you love the student, but it is loving the student well when you mention their needs, because the parents and you want the same thing. They want the best for their children. So be honest, ask their opinion, and help create a plan for the next steps to help them. And then at the end of all of your conferences, like Michaela said, end in something sweet. And then you can also end in prayer again too. And a firm handshake, if you remember.
Definitely. And then it's just a thank you to them for taking the time to come in. It is something that they're doing in their extra time of their day also. And so recognizing and being thankful that they did sign up and they are here and they showed up and they took the time to come also help with their child.
We mentioned a little bit about report cards. We share report cards at conferences. So now I want you to put on your teacher report card hats and start thinking about those. So at my school, we started off earlier. I'm in a Florida school. So we started school year earlier than most. Our Q1 is already complete. So our report cards are finished, and that means it's fresh in my mind, and I can maybe help you guys come up with some tips. So again, in the comments, it's a link to our school ministry drive is there. And I have a document that's titled Report Card Comment Tips and Examples. So for report cards, many schools require comments on there. So I have a lot of comment ideas on this document and some tips. So I'll go ahead and walk you through it now. Michaela already mentioned at the beginning to make sure you're aware of what day and time grades are due. Please plan to finish your report cards earlier. You never know when you're going to have a computer issue. I know I did today. So finish report cards earlier rather than waiting until the last minute if you can. I like to enter all of my grades before typing comments. So I use the written grades while writing the report card comments. If there are any D's or F's, I explain why they might have that in those classes, and I'll give a solution to it as well in the comment section. And I like to make myself a Google document of a bank of report card comments that I can copy and paste for students. This saves me probably half the time on report card comments if I can copy and paste rather than think about the wording for each and every student. I'll still alter the wording for students, but it's a lot easier to alter wording than it is to create each comment from scratch. So use what I created from scratch to help you and save your time. So on this document, I've copied and pasted some comments that I have used in the past. So I think it's important to always document accommodations and modifications or reference to their plan, whether it's an IEP or 504 plan or something similar to that. On this comment and examples sheet, I use XXX for student names because my eye is drawn to it to change the student's name. And then you can just plug in the student's name. So I'll say if they're part of our gifted program or if they have an accommodation plan. And then I'll also, so that'll be one thing I say. I also include either their reading level or AR progress, whichever one is applicable for your school. In my current school, we communicate reading levels earlier and not on the report cards, but you can. So my first bullet point on there is one way to communicate the reading level. I put it all in a big list, but I would really do it like a bullet pointed list up and down. And then AR is accelerated reader. If you guys have that program, again, it's important to communicate how they did with their goals. Whether you do that through report cards or something else, it doesn't matter as long as you communicate it. I like to start my comments off with a compliment to the kid. It can be as simple as this person is a pleasure to have in class, or it could be something more specific as well. It's up to you and how much time you have. Then I also like to explain social skills or work ethic if it's not listed somewhere on the report card, and I'll include it as a compliment usually, or something they need to work on after I compliment them. Our work habits and social skills are included in an O, S, and N format on the report card on the same page that their letter grades are, but I'll still talk about their work ethic sometimes or their social skills if I need to in the comments to further describe them. And then after I compliment them, I know I've mentioned that a lot, compliment first, establish the relationship first. Then document important things for the family to be aware of and for future schools or future teachers to be aware of as well, because this is a document that will travel with them to help teachers know a little bit about the student. It is one of the common things that schools look at when students change schools. And it's a way for a teacher to get to know each student before the school year if they choose to do so. So it also shows that you have communicated with parents. So it is a way to prove that you've addressed it with parents so that they don't say that they were totally surprised at the end of the year about something you said when it has been on every single report card and you did talk about it during conferences. Nothing on the report card should be brand new to parents either. So as you're typing comments before they're due, if you notice that you really want to tell a parent something and you have not told them yet, email them or call them before they get the official report card. It is better for them to hear of a concern that you have before this official document goes out. Because again, especially now at the beginning of the year, you want to establish that good relationship with the families. If I say something, if I bring up a concern, I'll say the concern, and then I'll also say something of what they can still be doing. I'll try to phrase it assuming parents are already doing something or assuming students are already doing something to help with this. So instead of saying, you need to read to your student every day and make sure that they're actually getting their homework done, I would never say that on a comment. I would say, please continue to work with your child in whatever format I want to suggest. So use please continue in order to help establish that relationship. Assume the parents are already doing something and put the best construction on it because they do want to help their children. And then also end it with hope. So like, I know that with continued practice, this child will be able to XYZ. You don't want parents to feel despair at the end of reading the comments. So end it hopeful and kind.
Very nice. Another thing too, if making all these comments seems like a lot, or when do I have the time to do all of this? If you know report cards are coming up, you can always start some of this ahead of time, like especially if you know it's a behavioral thing you want to address, or you just know you just need to leave a good comment. They're doing well academically, you know they're doing well behaviorally, you're not really having any concerns. Some of these you could do the weeks leading up to it. Just pick a handful of kids and be like, oh, today I'm going to do these 5. And then you don't have to sit down and try to do them all because you can really kind of fatigue yourself if you just sit down and try to do a whole class full of these at once. So if you are able to maybe separate it out and take 5 today, 5 tomorrow, and then by the end of the week have them all done is nicer than maybe sitting down on Friday or a Saturday and trying to do them all.
Yes, it really does help to do it in groups. Sometimes I've grouped students by similar traits, character traits, and done, this group who has similar character traits, I've just done their comments, and then I only have to tweak a few words for each student in that. Other times I've grouped students and done like 5 a day. Let's say I'll do 5 girls today, 5 girls tomorrow, 5 boys the next day, so that I don't have, when I'm copying and pasting things like AR using him versus her, I don't have to change all of those pronouns. I can just keep all the boys him. And then, the other day I would do her for all of them. I've also just gone in number order before and just done 5 a day that way. So however you want to do it is fine, and you're going to get it done. But however you break it up, I think it will help. So today we talked a lot about report cards and conferences. These are 2 important ways to communicate with parents, which we know is essential at the beginning of the year, because you are setting the tone for the rest of the year with these families. And they need to know that you care about their child. And you need to put the best construction on it and know that they also care deeply about their child. So enjoy this time getting to talk with other adults, and don't be too worried because, like I said, you all have the same goal. You all want what's best.
I think that part's the biggest thing, knowing you're going into it as a team with those parents, working towards the same goals, not against them.
Yes. Yeah. So if you have any questions, go ahead and either unmute yourself and ask or post them in our meeting chat.
As people are getting ready to maybe enter some questions, just a couple things. I always think I like how you talk about the end, give them hope, set the relationships, everything else. Sometimes a nice postcard from you home, thanking the parent for attending the conferences and how you look forward to the rest of the year. Just another engagement. Remember, any relationship building that you do pays dividends, especially if you do have to have a difficult conversation, missing assignments or there's an incident or something like that. I always think that helps. Also, I always advise, and I did this at conferences, maybe it's just me and my memory and stuff, but I always like to take notes for myself so that the next conference, I can look and see what we talked about at the last conference. And then I can also hit on some things that may be improved or some things that did not improve, and then talk about, I see that we haven't really improved as much as perhaps we were working toward. Any thoughts from you as parents, maybe of how to address this or things that work at home, like you talked about before? They might have some items there too. I also think, parent-teacher conferences, what a great time to be inviting and show off the school. You talked about your classroom, but I always think it's kind of nice in terms of invite PTL to come in and set up a little, if it's nighttime, a punch station and some small snacks like little bags of popcorn or something like that at the entrance of the school. Maybe some water bottles or coffee if it's in the morning or something like that. And again, another great way to get PTL engaged and involved and give them a project to do that they take ownership of, and it shows that community feeling and the culture of the school. Middle school, high school, back in my day there, one of the things that we always did is we never wanted to have the parent, especially if there were concerns going on and a child was struggling academically or socially, something like that. We never wanted to have the parent come in and hear that in every classroom. So if they had 7 classes, each teacher is kind of saying the same thing. By the end, the parents are worn out by, oh no, what in the world is going on? So instead we had a team meeting. You bring everybody together, and you might think, well, that could be a little intimidating. So you got to ease that down a little bit. But then it gives you that opportunity to hear it one time and then to talk, as you, Michaela and Esther have said, how do we do this together? What are some ways that we can, help one another for the success of the child, because that's what we all want. And also, don't forget, parents, the child is a reflection of them. That's what the parents feel like when they come into this meeting. So if they hear really good things about their child, they're thinking, hey, we're doing a pretty good job here. It's reaffirming. If they hear maybe some negative comments, they're thinking, how did we mess up? And you're really talking about us. So what's that like? So be, gentle, disarming, all of those things. Again, talk about the partnership items. It's great to have the sandwich item in there, the good stuff, and then maybe some of the things to work on, and then another good item, make them feel good before they leave. All those great tips of the trade. And again, they've left you with some great documents here in the resource file. We'll put more in that Google Doc folder for you to access and download and to utilize. Take what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, leave it behind. But our goal here is to truly help you be successful in all ways.
Mhm. Thanks for adding that. I especially like that you mentioned how parents feel like their child is a reflection on them. So this year, there have been some parents who I have told many times, you are doing a really good job, and thank you for all of your work, especially, getting him tutoring or, you know, communicating well with me and with him and setting high expectations and making goals because they're human. Parents are humans too, and they need to know that they're doing a good job. If you see them doing a good job, tell them.
And one other item too is never make comments like, I think you should get your child tested, or maybe they have ADHD. I mean, we don't know that as educators. We don't have that ability to diagnose, nor do you want to put yourself in a situation where now you've just told them that they need to go and have an evaluation done that could create some legalities in that, which is why I bring it up. So always avoid that. Just talk about strategies. And if you think that there's something going on, that's where you would talk to your administrator and say, hey, where do I go with this? How do we help a child and a family like that and develop it that way? But that's always a path not to go down. Not just in parent-teacher conferences, but even side conversations with the parents or whatever else. And sometimes they may ask you that. Do you think my child has ADHD? And you don't want to say, oh, yes, thank you for bringing that up. That's not the case. You want to talk about, well, we want to talk about strategies for them to be successful. And this is what I'm seeing. I can't tell you because I'm a teacher. I don't have the background in that to diagnose. So what we need to focus on is, how can your child be successful in here? What are strategies that you're utilizing that maybe I can? And here are some things that are happening in our classroom. Keep it at that.
Mm-hmm. And if they do inquire about, if they say, do you think my child has ADHD? Just like Al Freeman just said, don't tell them, oh, yes. But you can say, I'm not a doctor. I can't say yes or no, but you can talk to your pediatrician and I'd be happy to, fill out an evaluation if he wants me to do that, or if they want me to do that. Or I'd be happy to share the strategies that I'm using in class that are helpful for them. I'll share them with you. And if you want to bring them up to your pediatrician when you have that annual visit, you can. So, and maybe you'd know if this is right or not. But I've in the past asked parents, when they've brought up concerns or said, or if I've said, this is what I see in class, do you have strategies? Like, have you seen this at home? And do you have strategies for that? And they're like, oh, it's confusing me too. I don't know what to do. And they're overwhelmed by something. Then I have said, have you talked with the pediatrician about it? And, oh, yeah, I guess I should. So I've asked them I've asked some parents that I've had a good relationship with before if they have. And sure enough, they got tested, filled out the forms, and now they have a plan and we can implement more strategies than I could have otherwise. So,
Yeah. My advice coming from,
the admin side, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Is I always hesitate on that because the one time, it's always great when it goes well,
Right.
but there's always that one time, and if it goes wrong, it can go really wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Because it can be a whole legal thing. And
Exactly. So yeah, I never advise, in a setting like that, have you spoken to a pediatrician or, directing that.
okay.
Instead, the strategies, absolutely, here are things, what are you working on at home, and some other items. Instead, I might talk to the school about the monthly newsletter that goes out. And just a reminder in the newsletter that pediatricians can be a great resource if you see
Yeah.
changes in your child. And here are some helpful tips like that. So
Yeah.
it's not specific to a parent, but you're getting the message through, right? So
Right.
a much different way that I would go about it, and in my admin legal mindset would feel better about it.
Yes, that makes sense.
But we're
Thanks
always
for
there to help, right? I mean, that's the thing
Right.
is we all have such caring hearts. We just want the child to be successful, and that's why we're doing it. Unfortunately, in today's society,
Mhm.
sometimes that can go a different way.
Right, you do have to be careful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other items? Any other questions? Well, as always, Michaela and Esther have done a tremendous job here with discussion and tips and resources. I don't know where the two of you were when I was out there teaching, but it probably would have helped me a great deal. I know Esther has conferences to get to, so she'll be praying then. Michaela, do you mind closing us here?
Definitely. Let's fold our hands and pray. Dear God, thank you for giving us this time to come together and share ideas and tips so that we can go into our calling with confidence, that we are prepared to speak to parents of the children that we all care about so much. We thank you for your guidance and the gifts that you have given each of us and our students and our parents. We ask that you bless everyone as conference season is here or as it gets closer for each of us. All this we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank
you,
you.
Esther. Michaela. Esther, I hope you have some good sticky notes that you're giving away to parents with some good
I've got
items on there.
thousands. Thanks to you.
That was a good tip. So,
I mean, those are the ones that I'm using.
awesome.
So,
That's it.
yep,
Spread
from
that school
LCMS School
ministry.
Ministry. Yes.
That's great. Don't let Will hear that. He's asking where all the sticky notes went. I said they went to a great spot.
Yep. 4A at St. Luke's.
Oh,
I've dispersed some, quite a
awesome.
few, but I still have a lot.
I
Thank
love
you.
it.